Hi, everyone. So, over the next few days, I want to do some past wrap up videos. This one is going to be for the month of June. Now, June was not a great reading month for me. I went on vacation and didn't have as much time to read as I normally would. I read 11 books that month, including a reread. Most of them were ebooks since I was traveling. Okay, so the first one was Neon Gods. I found out about it because it was on a list of like most frequently checked out ebooks from libraries, so I decided to give it a shot. Basically, a modern retelling of Persephone and Hades. This book was a little bit confusing. Now, it is classified as erotica, so there was some sex scenes in it, although nothing huge. I think most people would read it and be like, "Oh, okay, that's not that big of a deal." Um, this was kind of the world building was confusing to me. So basically, gods are like fill-ins for these modern titles, and they have what's known as legacy positions, where someone fills a position and they go by the legacy name of Hades or Zeus or Hera. And Persephone is the daughter of the legacy Demeter. And Demeter has been invited to join like Olympus and take on the title, and she wants to marry her daughter to Zeus. And so her daughter would become Hera. Unfortunately, Heras have died frequently, and Persephone thinks it's because Zeus is killing them. So she doesn't want to marry Zeus. So she escapes and she winds up in the underworld, which I still am not really quite sure what that is. And Hades has been like kicked off Olympus. He's no longer allowed to participate. This wasn't a fantasy novel, which was kind of weird to me. I feel like it would have made more sense if it was, but it seemed like it was supposed to take place in our world. So that was my biggest issue with it, was the world building. And Hades is like this mysterious guy. No one really knows him. People claim he doesn't exist, which also didn't make sense to me because there's like these two people. I can't remember who they were, but they were other. They weren't gods, but they are other mythical names who frequently hang out with him and know that he's there and know that he's real. Um, but they're not telling people about him. There's not, I mean, like, these are two witnesses to the fact that he does actually exist, and they're not loyal to Olympus either. So it's not like they've got some kind of vested interest in helping Olympus protect the secret of Hades. All right, so I mean, it was a fun story. I got a little caught up in the world building, and I wish that had been made clearer. Okay, so the next book I read, kind of keeping with the theme here, was Song of Achilles. This is another big book on TikTok about, I can't believe I forget the main character's name, but Achilles' love interest was the narrator. And the story itself was good, although there was kind of a weird storytelling device used at the end that I didn't really care for. I don't want to say too much about that because I don't want to spoil the ending. I also didn't like the fact that Achilles' love interest was not a good soldier. I think the story would have been much improved if he had been, which I think would have been more true to the myth too, because what happens is they send him into battle in Achilles' place, thinking that he can just be Achilles, like he can rally the troops. They'll want to go fight, and then he's just going to hang back. I felt like that would have been better if he'd been like, well, I'll just go and fight in your place. I'm just as good as a fighter as you, so no one's going to know the difference. Instead, it was, let's put this guy that's a terrible fighter in your place and hope for the best. It seems like a bad plan to me. I also didn't like the character of Achilles. He got on my nerves. I didn't like him at all, and so I think I even said this in my review on Goodreads. It made it hard to connect with his love interest because I'm like, why are you so obsessed with this guy? Why are you so obsessed with Achilles? He's such an obnoxious person. You deserve better. I think I even thought that several times. Okay, so the next one, this was another ebook that I read. I Must Betray You by Ruta Sepetys. Ruta Sepetys, I think, is going to be one of those authors where I try to read like everything that she writes. She writes about really good, interesting topics that are very much underdone in historical fiction. This particular one took place in Eastern Europe. It's under a dictatorship, and they're very isolated. They don't news media is kept out, so they don't know what's going on with the rest of the world, and it's also almost like a surveillance state where everyone is encouraged to spy on everyone, and everyone is suspected of being a spy. He is basically blackmailed into spying for the main character. Christian is blackmailed into spying for the government. The next book, this was an audiobook and a reread, Harry Potter and the Sorcerer's Stone, where I was driving a lot. I had some time for audiobooks, so I decided to reread this one. It's always a good read. Never Leave Me was another ebook. This is from a Waters of Time series, a Christian sci-fi series about time travel. I think this was actually the second book in the series. Both were a little underwhelming. I really didn't understand how the time travel worked, and I felt like it got too convoluted. And the characters are annoying, especially in this one. Like, the main character, the one we're focused on, is just like too good. Annoying, obnoxiously good and perfect. And I just can't. Like, that kind of character is just boring to me. Okay, so I've talked a little about this book. My Stephen King read for the month was The Stand. The unabridged version, actually, is what I got. So the originally published version was a little bit shorter. According to King, nothing was really lost in the story. I didn't like this book. It was way longer than it needed to be. There was just too many characters, so you didn't have the chance to like develop each of them individually. And like halfway through the book, I kept thinking, I just can't wait for this book to be over. So some people do like this. Basically what happens is a bioengineered virus is released from a military facility and infects a whole bunch of people, and it starts killing off the United States population. Several people are immune, and those who survive the virus make their way to Boulder, Colorado, and create kind of like they try to create like a utopian society. And then meanwhile, if you've read his other books, you're probably familiar with the antagonist, Flag. Flag is creating his own society in Nevada, and a lot of the plot was pushed by like visions. A lot of the main characters had a vision telling them to go to Boulder. There was no real other motivation than, well, I'm being spoken to and told I need to go to Boulder. Similar thing to the people who were attracted to Flag settlement. And then the people who were in Boulder got visions of Flag, but they were scared off by that and like, we have to defeat him. So just too much of the plot was directed by these visions, and I didn't really like that as a device. Okay, the next was a Kindle ebook that I read mostly just to get like a Kindle achievement, The Bible, Period by Period. It was a very short read. I didn't really feel like I got that much out of it. The next book I read was called Relative Justice. I always get those two confused. I think his goal is to be like a Christian John Grisham, and tell like legal thrillers, but from a Christian's perspective. Now, I've never read John Grisham's legal thrillers. However, I don't think he's most famous for his thrilling retellings of paperwork and tedious legal research, because that was mostly what this book was about. If you want to know how a law office works, and you want to know how they conduct research, that might be the book for you. But if you actually care about excitement and the plot being moved forward and things like that, skip it and read something else. Now, this is the only one of his books that I've read. The author's name is Robert Whitlow, so this is the only book of his I've read, but I really don't have a desire to read others. The next book I read was The One and Only Ivan by Catherine Applegate. Now, Catherine Applegate, she writes under that name now. In the past, she's used the pen name K.A. Applegate and did write the Animorphs series, which I loved when I was a kid. This book is more realistic. It's based on a true story. This is a Newbery Award winner book, and there's also been a movie made about it. This book was really good. Basically, this gorilla is captured in the wild and taken into captivity, and he lives at like a roadside zoo. And then an elephant is brought there, a baby elephant, who is also captured in the wild, and Ivan becomes dedicated to getting this elephant to a better place. And so we hear the story about how that happens. The next book I read, this was good. I talked about this in my Unhaul book, The Girl with the Dragon Tattoo. I had never read this book before. There was two different plot lines going on, and it took a while before they both emerged. Like, you knew they would eventually. I read this one a lot on the beach, which was a really great experience. Basically, you have this journalist who is researching a cold case, a missing persons, and then you also have this private investigator. I don't remember much about the private investigator plot line, but she has like a personal storyline that's going on concurrently. I didn't like the journalist's character. He frustrated me a lot. He was like he felt a little bit like wish fulfillment for the author, where like every woman he came across in the story he ends up having an affair with. So that got on my nerves. The story didn't really hold my attention. This isn't one I recommend, and I don't plan to go through with the rest of the series. And then finally, another reread, another Audible, was Harry Potter and the Chamber of Secrets. I don't know what else to say about that, except it's always good when I get to read those books or listen to them on audio. Okay, so that was my June reading. Let me know what your favorite books are to read in the summer. Also, since I have some TikTok faves on here, I'd like to know from you, what are some backlist books that you think should make a comeback? What would you like to see that's already out go viral on Book Talk? Let me know your thoughts in the comments. And everyone, I will see you again soon.